When we were first assigned this project, I wasn't originally sure who I would do it on, but then it quickly became apparent that Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg would be a perfect fit. I didn't know too much about him before I started this project, other than the fact that I knew he created Facebook. I had also seen the movie The Social Network, directed by David Fincher, which is a mostly based off true events but slightly dramatized for Hollywood. The movie came out in 2010 with a poster that said something along the lines of, "You don't make 500 million friends without making a few enemies along the way." 7 years later, I'm pretty sure Facebook has amassed over 1 billion weekly users. It's pretty unique that you'll see a movie come out about an individual before their peak, but Mark Zuckerberg isn't a typical individual. So we'll take a deeper look into how he created Facebook, and also the individuals that played a role in his development and gave him the tools, in computer science specifically, to create such a dynamic social network. So let's take it back all the way to 1984 when Mark Zuckerberg was born and grew up in Dobbs Ferry, New York. Mark's mother was a psychiatrist who stopped practicing once she had kids, but his father was a dentist who remained working throughout his childhood. And Mark would spend a lot of time working with the computers in his office trying to develop more efficient networks for his business. Sometime in his early teens, Mark Zuckerberg was taught Atari, a basic computer language usually used to code simple games. Using these complex tools, he began to make a software he called ZuckNet, which allowed computers to communicate to each other, which now seems so trivial and easy, but back then it was a primitive version of the AOL messaging system. Mark's parents were pretty impressed with his early success with computer coding, so they set up weekly meetings with a tutor and software developer by the name of David Newman. David Newman actually lost track of Zuckerberg throughout his college years and was impressed to find out that he had created Facebook, but he wasn't surprised because Mark had always been exemplary in coding and learning basic software. Learning these tools basically gave him the ability to succeed later in life and in college, and which helped him create Facebook. In fact, Mark became so advanced with software development that he was actually taking graduate-level computer science courses at Mercy College while he was still in high school. So there are actually a few unique circumstances that allow Mark to be the computer prodigy that he is today. First and foremost, he grew up in a household that had a network of personal computers, mainly for his father's business, but most children didn't have access to this type of technology during the 90s, and he really got a head start on learning software and coding because of this. In addition to just having the physical tools, his father, who was also a full-time practicing dentist, also took the time to learn computer coding, and he taught Mark his first computer code, Atari. In gifted education and in education as a whole, I think sometimes we too often discount a parent's influence they could have on their child when you already have a prominent individual in their life so focused and driven on one particular goal, learning the software, learning computers, it's brand new technology. I think it really influenced Mark to have a passion for this, and it's not like the world we live in today where if I wanted to learn computer science and computer coding, I could just Google it and watch informative YouTube videos about it. But back then, you kind of had to know somebody who was active in the field to really learn something about it, and this is why he had to take graduate-level computer science courses while still in high school, because this was cutting-edge technology, and at the time, a traditional high school could not offer even close to the curriculum that he needed to succeed. So I think Mark's dad probably had the biggest influence on him as a kid, and he recognized that his son had a very, unique talent and skill, and he cared enough to hire a part-time tutor that would meet with him weekly and a software developer that could really, show him the tricks of the trade. So now you have two individuals, Mr. Newman and Mark's father, who have the financial resources and the content resources to provide Mark all the education he needed to succeed. Another thing we know about Mark Zuckerberg is that he transferred out of his public high school in his junior year and decided to attend an elite private school in New Hampshire. I want to take a look at some of the things the public school could have done to keep Mark in the system and further enrich his development as a student there. During the mid-90s, computer science was still blossoming as an academic field, and there might not have been a course specifically offered in Mark's high school for this. I'm willing to bet also that Mark probably wasn't the only student interested in computer science at this time, and if there were more than one or perhaps even a few students, they could have developed a part-time special class that allowed them to take some time out of their traditional class schedule, maybe through a math elective, and work on accelerated subject material in either a group format or independently. Developing new curriculum for a small subset of students might be too financially strenuous on the district, though. It is a little discouraging that Mark had to go out of his way on his own to take these graduate-level computer science courses, so maybe the school could have accommodated him in a way that they could pull him out maybe the last 2 periods of his day and have him attend these classes at the local college. And those are just some quick curriculum changes that could be made to further accommodate Mark, but there are also some things that can be done on the enrichment side. The school could invite a number of speakers to talk about computer science as an advancing technology sector. The school could organize a club or a meeting group that discusses advancing topics in computer science and gets to work hands-on with the technology after school. In traditional K-12 education, I believe the United States focuses a lot of time on creating the building blocks to learn more going down the road, and I think in gifted education we have the rare opportunity where the students are already prepared to take the next steps and learn more. It's clear Mark has the quantitative ability to craft complex computer programs, and he also has the creative ability to do so as well. And I think a lot of focus on an instructional plan for Mark, for example, would focus on mathematics because computer science is so deeply rooted in quantitative analysis and logic, but I also think there's opportunity to expand in other subject areas. For example, in science, he could learn more about the engineering and the hardware that goes into building and making great computers. In his social sciences classes, he could further examine prominent figures in the field of technology. Steve Jobs and Bill Gates were already head-on in the technological revolution, and there was a lot of information to be learned from them. And a lot of my focus has been primarily on the public school that Mark attended before he decided to transfer to a private school. Now, the private schools will pretty much always be available to extremely gifted students who have the resources and accessibility to attend one of these institutions, but I think one of the greater challenges for gifted education moving forward is providing these tools and resources through a public education. And it made sense that Mark might want to attend a different school system where he could be grouped with more like-minded students who shared his interest and passion for computer science. And we shouldn't just be grouping for the sake of keeping all these students together. It's important that they work collaboratively to solve problems within their respective fields. And analyzing Mark now as an adult, we see that certain social manifestations have become apparent in his daily life. Some of his close friends and colleagues note him as sort of standoffish and impatient to people who can't quite follow his train of thought. Another thing I've learned about gifted students and gifted individuals is that you need to be willing to take appropriate risks, whether that's going outside the traditional curriculum to find a better plan that's suited for you, or in Mark's case, dropping out of Harvard to begin his fledgling technology company. You got to be willing to take the appropriate risks at the appropriate times to receive the full benefits of your potential. And I think there are 3 things you have to do to benefit a student like Mark, or really any gifted individual. You have to group them so you have the appropriate population you want to work with. You need to differentiate the curriculum to properly suit their needs, and then combine that with enrichment activities, whether that be field trips or speakers or mentors. Every student is going to have their own particular needs, but I think if you're hitting these 3 main criteria, you're going to see a pretty comprehensive program that ends up being successful in the long run. So I appreciate you listening, Dr. Brown. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. I'm going to close it out with a video I found on YouTube while analyzing and researching Mark. It's one of him getting accepted into Harvard, and I honestly thought it was just too funny not to include in this video.
Reporting that there is an email from Harvard. Is that correct?
Yeah. Alright, so you want me to open this?
I don't know.
Does that sound like it? I think it is.
What does it say?
Wait, yeah, put it away for a second.
I can't see it.
Oh, man. Yay.
What?
I got accepted.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
All right! Yes! Great. Okay, we are now focusing on the newest, or one of the newest members of Harvard's class of 2006, and the dog that belongs to one of the newest members of the class of Harvard 2006.